Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
I enticed her into the woods with words worth dying for. Dropped her on the daisies with praises worthy of the moment. Attempting to speak truly, if not truthfully, about lost things in lost places with lost words and a lost song, and somehow bring them to be found. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I appreciate all of you and taking the time to fellowship with me this evening. When I was doing my Saturday broadcast, Kathy had my friend Kathy had informed me that Justice Anton Scalia, was dead. And I wasn't, then at that time sure of the circumstances surrounding his death or having in any way looked into the story. But I felt like something was really weird. I had a weird feeling about it just because of the whole cycle of the presidential election stuff going on with Trump and Hillary and Bernie Sanders and others, and with this being the end of Obama's term, if we can get him out of office, um, I just felt like something was not exactly right about his passing, and especially with his being a constitutionalist and being one of those that kind of strict adherence to it and had been argumentative with Obama and pushing certain policies and having these laws get pushed forward and ratified and installed, whether executive order or, however. Um, it just seemed like something was not right about the whole situation. And so I spent the past few days looking into the story and trying to learn more about what had happened and what's going on. And so today I'm going to talk about that, and I'm also going to ask those of you which are familiar with the story that know probably even more than I do, because so many of you are such well informed individuals and having looked into and keeping up with current events. And, all of us in studying from different aspects and different perspectives and different angles of the story, we all come to learn different things. And many of us have different individuals we go to listen to, for updates on certain aspects of the story, um, to keep up with current events and also to get an insider's perspective on what's up with world. And so we're all approaching it from different sources, different references, and it's good to fellowship and the way that we do here on Revolution Radio, and those that also, whether you're part of forums or boards or just talking with different Facebook groups or your neighbors, whatever, um, that because so many, especially here on this network, are interested in the pers- political slant of what's going on with the world, and because a lot of people are still involved highly with their lives and with the following the electoral process and all of that. I'm sure that many of you have informed opinion, and so after the first break, gonna open up the phone lines, and if anybody does want to call in, has commentary or something that they would like to share, certainly I would like to hear what you have to say. And I'm going to talk about just kind of what I know and what I've learned about this particular story, but it absolutely does seem that it's really even obvious um, that something was done. And if they were trying to keep it a hush hush, they they would have not been as um, they wouldn't have left the perpetrators wouldn't have left clues that to it being possible assassination. And you got to remember, this is huge, with Scalia being one of 9 justices appointed to life on the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, it doesn't go any higher than that. And with the current balance, as far as the liberals and the Republicans or a conservative stance, it was split largely down the line between the 4 liberal, 4 conservative, and then usually there was a swing vote, somebody that could go either way with depending on the issue. And that has I guess that has served the courts well in keeping balance as far as the policies. Of course, it's my opinion that a lot of things have been done and have been passed even at the highest levels of the Supreme Court, which otherwise should not have. And that really, even with the U.S. Supreme Court, if the powers that be want something to get pushed on to the American people in the way that they want it to be pushed on to the American people, that it will it will get passed and it will become law, or it will be upheld as law. And so the fact that there's this now massive power vacuum, and that if Obama, because he's now threatening to use this nuclear option to install a Supreme Court candidate without even senatorial confirmation or any kind of um, outside approval, he could absolutely swing it more so to the liberal side and have a unanimous vote in that manner to really push forth an agenda which would be, well, it could be disastrous for America. And and as far as the rule of law, I absolutely believe that it's been subverted for a very long time. in our country, and that with the, even like with the installment of the Federal Reserve System back in 1913, that things have been largely downhill, and that they have been able to use the money and the power that they and the control that they've generated through the Federal Reserve System to not only bring forth the manifestation of Pike's vision. I'm talking about Albert Pike and his um, his vision for bringing forth a one world order by orchestrating through the Freemasonic secret society networks and these close knit fraternities and Masonic groups, these fringe Luciferian satanic groups, um, the perpetuation, and also with the mafia and other terrorist elements and other covert power monopolizing groups like Weishaupt's the Illuminati, all these really fringe work from the shadow type elitist New World Order agenda groups that they've been pushing forth. And after 1913, it became possible for them to fund both sides and to orchestrate these wars, these global wars, in order to drive agenda and set forth principle and um, and doctrine for the creation of world government. And also, you have to remember, because Pike's vision also speaks about the creation of Israel as a way to foment um, controlled opposition between that of the Zionists and what would be the Arab world. And that has been ongoing. I mean, it's biblical. It's absolutely biblical as well. It's written into Zechariah chapter 12. I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling amongst the nations. And so the New World Order has been fulfilling biblical prophecy in perpetuating and pushing the things that they have over the course of the last several hundreds of years, and especially that of the last few decades since 1948. And so the creation of Israel as a nation state um, has was funded and has been pushed by the United Nations, the exact seat of world government that ha- these three global wars, or the two that have already occurred, World War One and World War Two, these two global um, wars between the socialists and that of the rest of the free world and the communists, um, that this controlled opposition, because it absolutely is controlled opposition. Um, and especially if you begin to look into it, I know that after my awakening with 9/11, I started to look into the other incidences of false flag terrorism and discovered that even as far back as World War II, that Eisenhower and the powers that be, that they pulled the radar system uh, out of Hawaii, and they allowed the Japanese to attack the United States and to succeed in their slaughter their decimation of our Pacific Fleet in order to affirm our entrance into that war. And that there were even the History Channel did a series on this about how several Japanese mini subs had been sunk before the the aerial assault on the Pacific Fleet, um, before it had ever reached and started bombing all those battleships and cruisers and destroyers and aircraft carriers, and you know and that nobody sounded the alarm, and that even though the reports were coming in and were sent up through the channels to naval intelligence, they weren't shared. No warning was sounded. Everything was just left calm and and left in limbo. And yet there were already ships at war, with these Japanese submarines, and there were facets of the United States military, of the Navy, that knew that we were under attack, and that um, there was a greater invasion attack underway, and yet everything was kept hush hush. And our leaders, all the way up to the president, and the high command of Navy intelligence, and uh, whoever else knew about what was going on, and that didn't relay the messages to the rest of the Pacific Fleet to warn Hawaii of impending attack. All of them should have been tried for treason and for murder, because look at how many soldiers, how many seamen lost their lives on that day. It's it's so very sad. It's so very sad, but it lets you also know to what extent to what extent the government will go to in order to ensure. And I know I'm a little bit off topic. I will return back to Scalia here in just a few minutes, but I think it's important to visit this whole scenario because it ties together with his murder, with the murder of JFK, with the murder of many of our U.S. presidents, um, and even like with Andrew Jackson, with the attempts on his life, being shot 7 times. And a lot of people don't realize that he was at war with the central banks and was trying to prevent the creation of a central bank, a Federal Reserve System here in the United States of America. People don't even know that, um, even even with the sinking of the Titanic, that also has involvement and links to the creation of a central bank here, and links to the Federal Reserve. Because if you really look into that story, the sinking of the Titanic, what you will learn is that, um, there were two ships. There was another one, the Olympia, which was built identical to that of the Titanic, and that had been um, already was online and was involved in taking passengers here and there. And but what had happened is that it was in an accident. I forget exactly the nature of the accident. I think perhaps it had run into another ship or something of that nature. But anyways, it had a list. It would it would drag to one side, and it was structurally damaged, so much so that the White Star Lines, these cruise lines, the owners of those ships, and you can look into this because this has since been proven. It's not just a conspiracy or a conspiracy, theory. It's a actually conspiracy fact. But they switched these two ships and they changed the Olympia, made it the Titanic, and then John Astor, who was one of the richest men in the United States, and several other very wealthy individuals who were against the creation of a central bank, they were invited for the maiden voyage of this so-called unsinkable ship. They were, invited to take part on this maiden voyage of the Titanic, which was billed to be the world's most luxurious ship and cruise liner, and that it was sent to into iceberg and Arctic waters on purpose, and it was allowed the ship's captain, I forget his name, um, but he was a Mason, and he knew that he was going to sink the ship before he ever left on that voyage. And he knew that he was going to go down and he was going to die with it. Now, I don't know if he actually, tried to jump on one of these lifeboats or that he was going to um, try to preserve his life in any way, but he knew that he was going to take that ship down and that because otherwise they would have discovered that the Titanic and the Olympia had been switched. And when the Titanic went down, it was heavily insured. I mean, it was a massive insurance fraud as well by the White Star Cruise Line. And they were able to get enough money from the sinking of the Titanic to fund their operations and to build enough ships to monopolize um the shipping industry, and that also helped them to take control of further wealth, further power, and further control. And they were also able to murder off these very rich and wealthy individuals like John Astor, who was against the creation of a central bank and who had the money, the power, and the influence to fight against the what are the Federal Reservists. And yeah, that's a part of the story that you don't hear about very often. But someday I'll actually do a whole show where I bring up that whole story. It's a fascinating story in connections as far as the sinking of the Titanic. There were subtle differences between the Titanic and the Olympia, but they were largely built similar, and they weren't exactly twins, but they looked similar enough that they were able to pass it off as the Titanic. And that when they went down there, um, And they discovered the Titanic down on the bottom of the ocean, there was confirmation. Um, some of the letters had come off, or where it said Titanic, and you could see that the letters had had been installed to cover up that the ship was actually the Olympia. And so definitely Google search that. You should be able to find information on it, but it's absolutely a fascinating story. But it ties into what we're dealing with even today and with the death of Anton Scalia, because this is another one of those openly blatant um, acts of sedition and treason perpetuated by the New World Order and the power structure of the New World Order. And it was done as a warning to any who would oppose them. Because if they can murder a standing president in the face of the United States, as far as JFK, also shooting Ronald Reagan and making sure that George Bush would, be his running mate, um, and that George Bush would be part of the Reagan administration, and that nine Council on Foreign Relations individuals would be installed as part of his cabinet. I mean, they have been doing these kind of things for a very long time. And so what we see with the death of Scalia and the open, as far as a pillow being discovered on his face, we'll get into the details when we come back. Be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Um, yeah, there was a comment about the Titanic connection to all of this, and that it seems to be new for a lot of people, and it's not something that a lot of people talk about or have known about. And so I will, over the next couple weeks or so, when I get a chance, I'll cover this in greater detail and give you all the um, as far as elaborate on this particular story. But go ahead and going into that of Scalia, for those that don't know, he was visiting a ranch that was owned by an individual named John Poindexter, who has connections to some of these clandestine CIA and um, groups. He was part of these special forces and during the Vietnam War, and had successfully, um, so much so that, as far as some of these missions, black ops missions, or that aren't even told to the public, he was, for his bravery, he was honored by Obama, um, and given this reward. And he is the owner, and also a multimillionaire. Um, but he's the owner of this 350-acre ranch, if I recall correctly. That a lot of these high elitist individuals, Hollywood actors and stars, individuals like Tommy Lee Jones and Julia Roberts, and I forget who else they said had visited the ranch and stayed there, but they provide tours. It's a it's somewhere in Texas, and it's a huge ranch where people can go horseback riding. They can, these surrounding the environment, the landscape, and the visuals are supposed to be extraordinary, and it's well known as a luxury getaway. I believe that, some of the rooms were quoted as being like 400, 540 something dollars a night, and that people were coming from all over to, to book a stay there and to get this experience. They could, horseback ride and participate in trail, as far as going down trails and bird watching and fishing and different things of that nature. And that Scalia was supposed to be there. His son was also supposed to join him, but had backed out for whatever reason. And even though he was 79 years of age, he was of really good health. Um, Even though a story has been released recently by his son, I believe his son is named Eugene, 52 years old, and he talked about how the family believed that his father's death was of natural causes, and I have a hard time believing that. Hello, Blues Girl. Good to have you. Hello, Steph and George and Rio and Sindaloo and Zippy and all the rest that are in the chat, not in the immediate stream, but welcome and thanks for joining us. Um, Also, so, as far as this particular story, Scalia had gone down there without a protective, um, as far as, sort of like the Secret Service um, for the president. He didn't have any kind of protective detail accompanying him. And so he was being unprotected. It, if they were trying, if anybody were trying to get at him, that certainly this would be a good opportunity to do so. And what is interesting about this also is that it has connections to the election, which is going on right now. Um, there was a an interview done by Alex Jones, which I'm not a big fan of Alex Jones. I personally think he is controlled in that he's only allowed to say a certain amount. And even though he has done a great service as far as awakening people to the New World Order and 9/11 things like of that nature, but I still personally feel like there's something shady about him, and that the New World Order, even in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, they have as one of their tactics the control of opposition from top down. Even Lenin, I forget the exact quote, but he talked about how the best way to control the opposition was to lead it and to, basically assume authority of it from top down. And so that's the way they have done it and have orchestrated and take over. Like if anybody creates a company and they're successful in gaining certain amount of power or a certain amount of the market, they will get bought up by these conglomerates, which are controlled by the New World Order elitists. And so, and basically they print the money. It's not like they have any problem with wealth. They basically create it out of nothing. And not only that, but then they extend that creation of nothing to the governments and charge them interest to borrow this nothing. I mean, the full on Ponzi scheme. And it's been so largely successful for them that um, since the creation of the Federal Reserve, they've been able to own control and to buy anything and everything, and have done so. And so they have no problem at all with it just extending made up credit and paying somebody some monopoly money in order to take over their real assets. And because the whole world participates in the use of their monopoly money as to for barter and trade and supply and demand and for the exchange of goods, uh, they've been able to perpetuate this whole Ponzi game for a very, very long time. And so, anyways, back to Scalia. And so he was there visiting. And from what I understand in listening to this interview with Alex Jones and this insider, I forget his exact name. Um, I forget the exact name, but I did post it on the fallenangels.tv website. And he was a Clinton advisor. And he was talking about how he had learned some things which absolutely made, which verified that Scalia was murdered, and was murdered in a way that would send a message to not only the other Supreme Court justices, but anybody else that would stand up against them in not pulling or towing the line as far as the agenda for the New World Order. And it also seems to be in connection to, you know, the possibility, even though I think the elections are personally, in my opinion, completely rigged, and that nobody that actually becomes a that wins and actually becomes either a Republican or a Democratic candidate for presidency, that they, in my opinion, again, are part of the establishment or controlled by the establishment. But there's some discussion out there that is Donald Trump this outside candidate, and is he not part of the New World Order, and will he actually make a change? And same thing with Obama. I mean, they said all the same stuff about Obama, but anyways, and he was actually, this Washington advisor was actually talking about how the establishment was threatened by Donald Trump, and that they killed Scalia to create a Trump card, just like they were able to install George Bush when he was running up against, I think it was the 2000 election, when he was going against his cousin Al Gore. That, we've been basically offered kissing cousins since that time. Al Gore and George Bush, and then you had John Kerry and George Bush, cousins, same family, same bloodlines. Um, and that both Al Gore and John Kerry, they bowed out and stopped the the voting, um, stopped the counting of the votes in order to ensure that George Bush was elected to office and that he attained another 4 years. Yeah, I agree. Selection process. It's not about election at all. I mean, they have since trumped the popular vote with the whole electoral process, as far as the electoral college, and now these delegate systems, um, which I recently heard about how Hillary had lost to Bernie Sanders, but because of these super delegates, she was able to trump that. So that, that's just further verification that the whole process is rigged. But, anyways, so he was talking about how this would be a way for them to trump that um, that whole process if Donald Trump were to somehow go neck to neck with Hillary, if that's who they are choosing to install. Because it seems like, and I'm so glad I did not want it to come down to Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. Absolutely did not. And um, even though I don't think it matters one way or the other, that's why I personally don't participate in it. The lesser of two evils is still, in my opinion, the sport of evil. But anyways, I used to be just 100% gung ho about involving myself in politics, watching all the debates, writing articles about it, keeping up with it, making other people informed on all of it. But now it's just a complete waste of time, and I'd rather spend my time doing other things that which I feel are more important. But anyways, that's just my opinion. Now going back to Scalia, there's also when you look into the circumstances of his death, with his having gone to sleep about 9 p.m. that evening. He was found the next morning when breakfast was served, and John Poindexter, um, this guy that's part of these alphabet agencies and has these links. He said he had a really bad feeling. He went there with another person to check on Scalia, and they discovered him, in his bed in his room with a pillow on his face, and that his clothes were unwrinkled, and that he he said he looked peaceful, and he said that um, basically that he looked as if he had died peaceful. When a professor, William Mount, he also received a phone call concerning Scalia's death, and he did a couple, and those videos are also found on Fallen Angels TV. He did a report about how an insider had called him and told him that there were bruises all over Scalia, and that he had a puncture wound over his heart, and that it could possibly be connected um, to in during the I forget the exact commission, but in 1975, um, maybe it was the Warren. No, I don't think it was the Warren Commission. But anyways, the CIA was brought before Congress, and they were asked to testify about this, and it then came out about how the CIA had this heart attack gun, and how they were able to shoot this bullet full of poison into the heart, and it would simulate a heart attack. And the as far as the death of the individual would be seen as natural circumstances. And so there was also connections to that particular story. But anyways, another couple things that are very weird about Scalia's death is that he was declared as having died of natural causes, and that um, the justice, the judge residing over as far as making the determination of whether to have an autopsy on Justice Scalia, which, according to Texas law, should have been performed. She basically took the advice of the law enforcement officers that were out there on the scene, and said that no autopsy was necessary, and that they could go ahead and embalm him, and then basically get rid of the evidence, and no autopsy. Which, if you have a Supreme Court justice die of any kind of weird circumstances, most certainly, if you were in any way concerned, or even if you were just wanting to verify that it was not of some kind of weird scenario or some kind of foul play, you would most certainly investigate the situation and you would look further into it. You would, in the least, perform an autopsy. But this didn't happen. And there was a cover up. And it's my opinion that the family was also threatened in some kind of way because they agreed to not have an autopsy performed. And they pushed, in fact, for there not to be an autopsy done. And they said, again, I cited this another article by this Eugene Scalia, the 52-year-old son of Anton Scalia. He came out and said that the family believed it was all natural causes. And so there's a lot of weirdness associated to the death of Anton Scalia. And the fact that it occurred at the very end of Obama's term, and now here he has the opportunity to install another person to what is the strongest court of the land, and that he has the opportunity to swing and to control decisions that are being made in that way. I mean, we're talking about very, um, any kind of controversial, which there's also another, a Supreme Court case that is before the justices now, which will be picked up at some point, which is, is involved with immigration and with whether these illegal immigrants that are here, whether they can have a say in the electoral process, and um, that will benefit the Democrats and will also, um, not that I think in any way that the Democratic and Republican are not of the two sides of the same coin. I don't think we in any way have a two-party system. They're basically two sides of the same coin, and that we have a one-party system, in my opinion, and that the left and the right, the paradigm is completely manipulated and absolutely controlled. Stephanie asks, is it at least possible that the family knew Scalia had health issues? Yeah, absolutely. It very well could be that he had health issues. I mean, he's 79 years old. And anybody that gets that old, in my opinion, has, their bodies are breaking down on them, and that age is bringing them to disability. Certainly. And that the whole reason they set social security at 65 was because most people don't make it to that age or last that long. They don't want people to use their social security benefits. They don't want them to last to their golden age, their golden years, and then actually tap into um, the money that the government has set aside to take care of them in their retirement. No, the only reason it was set at that age is because they fully did not expect most people to make it there, and that they would work them to death, and to you know to cause them to struggle so much that very few would get to that point. And if they did, they wouldn't last long anyways. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Really quick, those of you that do enjoy and value the information that we bring forth here on Revolution Radio, that we have many hosts coming to you 24/7 on both Studio A and Studio B that volunteer our time and in coming to you in the way that we do and joining for you with you and gathering in this way that we're just trying to do our part in awakening others to the reality of what's going on as far as the end game, the new world order, and all that is being perpetuated as far as the reality that we have bought into as far as matrix and how the New World Order elites have steered the beliefs, foundational belief systems, and the perpetuation of lies, a web of deceit, how it's all been manipulated in order to drive people into believing a certain way in order to make them good taxpayers and good little worker bees and indoctrinate them into a system which says that we're basically to send our children and to ourselves get educated in the school systems that they have provided to uh, basically reinforce an idea and to manipulate us into becoming good consumers and buying into the whole American dream as far as materialism and perpetuating this whole ideology. And many, of us have bought into it and think that we are who our jobs define us as being. And that what matters is status in that way. What kind of jobs we can do, how much money we can make, and how well we can support the system. And that's who we are, and that's the only reasons why we're here. And that's all we are to do. And we're never to step out of our comfort zone. We're never to challenge the professional opinions of these elitists and the whole indoctrination into these educational systems, which are controlled and manipulated by these PhD degrees professors and scientists and economists, and and that we're all supposed to consider them um, the authority on everything just because they have bought into the system and have gone to extreme lengths in order to get their paperback degree, and that because they've dedicated 9 years of their lives or longer um, being brainwashed by the system, that we're somehow supposed to bow down to them. It's ridiculous. But anyways, those of you that appreciate the alternative voice of individuals like myself, individuals like yourself, because many of you as listeners have become hosts here on Revolution Radio and have given a voice and a chance to stand up for truth and to share what you've come to know. And so, those of you that can comfortably do so, support the network. Go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, click on the donate button, and share what you may. Even the price of a Happy Meal will give you access to all the archives, and it allows you to download all the different shows coming to you from all the various hosts in MP3 format, and then Share them, distribute them, listen to them while you drive. Don't buy into the commercialization of content as far as the radio, TV. Do something worthwhile with your time. Educate yourself in truth, not in what they want you to know. And so, anyways, going back into what we were talking about, I did, those of you that are part of the network at Fallen Angels TV, I did post a number of articles and videos which are connected to the story, and that if you watch some of those, you'll learn in greater detail those things that I'm speaking about and talking about this evening. And also, um, those of you that wish to, that might want to call in and share your commentary, if you want, have something that you'd like to say, the call in number is 310 421 4053 for Studio B. And I know I don't normally, you know, use the chat lines, or, and I always, um, but I know that I should. I should do that more often. And so I am wanting to and will at some point, try to remember to do that. There's just always so much information to cover and never enough time. And so, but anyways, I do respect your opinions. And so going back, I want to share really quick a passage from a book called The Occult Technology of Power, which was written for um, one of these heirs of, one of these rich elitist families. One of the his father was, over much of this power structure, and had groomed him since very young, um, to one day take over in his place and to basically inherit his kingdom, his empire. And so he writes and talks about, and has several of his advisors, individuals that are really close to him, teach him. And this occult technology of power gives you the dialogue between these several advisors, in instructing this youth about, you know the way that um, the way that the elitists and the Illuminati, the New World Order, the way that they work, and they basically have it down that the economics is much like magic, in that, they're basically able to create money out of nothing, and that in having this Ponzi scheme perpetuated and supported by the world's citizenry, that they're able to utilize that power and that control to manipulate all the inner workings of everything, and to, that basically all they have to do is manage things from the top down. And it's a very interesting book. um, I don't know. There was a time not long ago where it was difficult book to locate, but I do believe that they have since republished it. If not, somebody should republish it, because it's a fascinating read, and I do recommend you, if you want to know more about what I'm talking about, to definitely get it and read it. You can absolutely read it in one afternoon. But anyways, the quote that I want to share with you says this: "The so-called left-right political spectrum is our creation. In fact, it is accurately reflects our careful artificial polarization of the population on phony issues that prevents the issue of our power from arising in their minds. We control the right left conflict such that both forms of liberty are suppressed to the degree we require. Our own liberty rests not on legal or moral rights, but on our own control of the government bureaucracy and courts which apply the complex subjective regulations we dupe the public into supporting for our benefit. And there's if you read the protocol, certainly there's a lot of information in it which also is connected to the control of the left right paradigm. Now I'm going to post a link in the chat room to where you can find that occult technology of power, and you can read it online. It's absolutely fascinating read, and I recommend it so that you'll know what the elites are even teaching their own children, and how they basically laugh at us and treat us and teach them that we're the useless eaters and that we're not even wise enough to be hip about what they're doing and how they're doing it, even though they have all of these different papers out that were written in for them, um, and for others that are part of the establishment, um, and that they're not trying to hide anything. They have basically said exactly what they were going to do, how they were to achieve global domination, and also how they would manipulate through controlled opposition the agenda to drive the scenario for achieving their goals. And what we see with Scalia is just further, um, as far as a furthering of their goal and their agenda. And so, going back to the particulars of the death, um, there are stories that report Obama had met with Scalia prior, few days, if not hours, prior to his death, and that Obama also knew about several hours before it was released to the public that Scalia was dead. Sort of like, George Bush when he talked about on 9/11 how he had seen the first plane go into the tower when nobody was, supposed to have bared witness or to have seen that event occur because it was supposed to be a surprise. And yet he was sitting in a classroom, which um, the children of the classroom were actually talking about and singing a song about planes going into the towers or something of that nature. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, look up I Pet Goat. It was a film that was made by these Illuminists, the same ones that recorded you know, uh, the George Bush sitting in the classroom, and the children are basically singing a song um, about how the planes were going to hit the steel, is what it was. The planes were going to hit the steel. The children are singing it, and this is all before the Secret Service guy comes in and whispers into George Bush's ear that a plane had hit the towers. And so all of that was orchestrated as well. And so they knew beforehand. I mean, they even released how FEMA was in New York the night before and how all um, the public the public relations liaisons of United Airlines and the other, I forget the other airliner that was used, United, somebody else. But anyways, they were warned beforehand and basically told to get ready for a long day, that you were going to have to stand out before the media and answer a bunch of questions. And so, the false flag terrorism, the assassination attempt, this heart attack gun, supposedly Scalia was found with a puncture wound above his heart on the left side of his chest, which, the I believe somebody was in the chat room was talking about um how they could shoot you with basically with an ice bullet, and that it would dissolve and nobody would ever know, you know. And so maybe that's what it was. They took, one of these ice bullet guns and shot Scalia in the heart, and that's why there was a puncture wound in his heart. But of course, there would be no traces of any kind of ballistics, any kind of shell casing, or the the bullet shot from um, from a gun in that kind of way. And so, anyways, the fact that they didn't cover up and tried to hide evidence of a crime being perpetuated is it lets you know how bold they are in their where they are, um, and how much control they have, so that there's not even an investigation when there's absolute signs everywhere that foul play was involved, and how the family's not even concerned with any kind of investigation. Oh yeah, George says I watched that yesterday, Zen. It's creepy how they had the children reading that at the exact time that the attacks are taking place. Yeah, it's totally creepy. I mean, it is absolutely mind blowing. Um, the kind of hints and the warnings that they put out to let you know that they're basically, you know, pulling off these kind of things. I mean, it's just it's mind blowing. They basically, like all of the films and the shows which showed 9/11 stuff, now that the actual event occurred, but people remembered seeing them, like in the Lone Gunman episode, even Lethal Weapon. They show the planes going into the towers and disappearing. I mean, there's so much that is involved as far as Hollywood, where they're scripting these things into these Hollywood movies, and then after some kind of crazy event occurs, then people remember seeing them, and that we were all conditioned, and that these kind of things were placed into the scripts of these movies and these shows, even with The Simpsons. There's all this 9/11 premonition. And so we've been warned, even the protocols talk about a time when there's going to be an economic collapse. And there was a woman, I forget who her name was, but she was talking about this whole thing with Scalia's death, and how it was also connected to possible economic collapse, and which, I basically say we should at all moments be ready, because we never know when it's going to occur, but it's my opinion it will happen sometime, and that it's written into the protocols. They talk about how there will be a time when they collapse everything. when, basically the phoenix rises out of the ashes and order is brought out of chaos. And so if you're not preparing yourself and you're not warning yourself, I mean, warning your family and others about the impending scenario of, this economic collapse and the other things that they've already scripted into the playbook, well, then you're absolutely foolish. Which this this brings me to something that I wanted to share with you. Because I get asked a lot by individuals that don't have a lot of money or that are struggling to make it themselves, um, how they can, how they can prepare or to plan or put away any kind of dehydrated food or anything of that nature. Well, I just recently found a website and a dehydrated food maker called Augustin Farms, Aguasson Farms. I have to tell you, the food that they make is much better than I've eaten anywhere else. Mountain House, MREs, anything of that nature. Their food is incredible. Everything I have tried besides the granola has been fantastic. In fact, I like it so much that I've been buying it just to, well, I had bought a number of selections just to try them out. The smaller sizes that are only last, up to 7 years. But of course, they have the number 10 containers, which last up to 30 years and have a shelf life of 25 to 30 years as long as you have them in a mild temperature. Well, you can go to their website and sign up for their newsletter. They send out regularly, every month, 30, 40, and 50% off often on, a lot of their product. And it's a incredible way to be able to stack up and to go ahead and put away some of these really incredible foods. I mean, their food is really tasty. I'll give you some of my favorites. I like they have these gourmet soups, the tomato basil, the cheesy enchilada soup, um, the gosh, all of them are so good that I've had, but those are some of my favorites. And then the chicken and noodle. God, there's so many that are really good. So go there, sign up for their newsletter, and that would be a great way for you um, to get, because it's already not as expensive as Mountain House, and it's basically the same price as what you're going to buy for regular food, anyways, when you go to the grocery store. And you can um, get these really incredible discounts. And they also have a section where um, they're getting rid of stock and they have it on sale for very cheap. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. I did post a link to the Augustin Farms in the chat room. I do recommend um, their soups are incredible. The creamy potato is awesome. The the broccoli and cheese soup is one of my favorites as well. The Crown Canyon cheesy potato soup. I mean, they're fantastic. They're like gourmet meals and they're so easy to make. All you have to do is heat up some water and then mix it in. Che- the chili cheese enchilada soup is fantastic as well. The cream of chicken. I mean, there's so many. As far as dehydrated foods. This is absolutely the best that I've eaten, and there's a wide selection of every, and I know I sound like I'm a representative of the website, but I'm not. I just wanted to share with you because they have such incredible sales. I mean, you can get 50% off a lot of times. I would most certainly don't purchase unless you get one of these big coupons, and they always have site wide sales, and you can stock up for very, very cheap. And like I said, the individual packs are good for 7 years, and then you can get these smaller cans and also the number 10 size cans for, like $20. You can, when they have the 50% off sale, for $10, you can get a number 10 can. I mean, that's unheard of. The Mountain House cans, they sell for 28 to $30, and then if they're uh, just like just um, chicken or beef, some of those cans go for $45 each. And so, yeah, I would most definitely recommend go check out Augustin Farms, and their food is incredibly tasty, easy to make. The buttermilk pancakes are one of my son's favorites. And I have to tell you, when I first got in the dehydrated food, my friends and my children, they were like, "I'm not eating that," and they refused to even try it just because it was dehydrated food product. Um, but after we made it and after they smelt it, everybody here was totally down with eating it and with trying it. And so it's a great way to stock up for very cheap, because I know a lot of people are out there are struggling, and um, and you might not have heard about them because not a lot of people know about them. Most people goes to Wise Foods or Mountain House, and I've tried them as well. I've eaten their products, and I have to tell you, Augustin Farms is my favorite, and I'm not going anywhere else anymore. So, especially with the discounts, because I don't see Mountain House or Wise Foods ever run discounts like that. You know. So, anyways, going back to Scalia and his murder, um, you know, article, ranch owner, just the headlines to some of the articles that I post on my Fallen Angels TV website. Ranch owner states that there was a pillow over Scalia's head when he was found dead. Um, and there were, I also posted two articles which might be interesting to people as well. Six goals of the Illuminati outlined in a 1924 newspaper article. And then also another one, the 10-point plan by Alice Bailey and the New World Order, talking about the subjugation and the subversion, the destruction of the family, uh, basically the um, instigation of a sexual and a drug revolution here in America, and the destruction of family values. Um, and all these different articles. Scalia held secret meeting with Obama hours before his death. The weapon used against Judge Scalia, what the CIA wants to suppress, but has just been publicized, and that was talking about um, the heart attack weapon. Here's an interesting one as well. Kremlin in turmoil after Trump letter to Putin suggests the U.S. Supreme Court justice was murdered. This is an interesting article in that Trump had written to Putin talking about the Bush family involvement with Osama bin Laden, how a lot of their wealth was um, created from their relations with that particular family. Also, he talked about Prescott Bush, George H.W.'s grandfather and George Bush Sr.'s father, and how he was involved with Hitler and Nazis, and that they were, basically trading with the enemy, and how they earned their wealth when Congress shut down their company, but then paid them a couple $1 million um, in compensation for having shut it down. And, that's how the Bushes got their wealth, and how they were involved in trading and providing material goods to basically the Nazis, the enemies, and how they've been involved with participating in that kind of manner for a very long time. Um, and it's a very interesting letter to read, but basically, Trump said that if he were to become president, that he would reach out to Putin to have better relations, and how certainly he would pull America out of those wars of which the Bush family had got us involved in, um, and that they would never meet in Texas because he feared assassination. And he even talked about how he felt like the Bush family was after him. And so, you're welcome, George. And for all of you that have signed up on that website, I really think you're going to be impressed with the quality of their food. And you'll find it's just as easy as, I mean, for the price that you're going to pay to eat out at, McDonald's, or which I don't eat at McDonald's personally, but those of you that actually do eat their food, um, when for the price that you're going to pay to basically purchase food in a grocery store or even at a fast food restaurant, you can basically get an incredible meal, um, and you can store it for a very long time. I mean, and I really think that once you do, let me know what you think about their food. I think it's just really incredible. So I think you'll enjoy it. But anyways, so all these things which are occurring, and the fact that Scalia is now out of the way, and that he was one of the um, he appealed to the Constitution, and basically challenged Obama and his views, because Obama, is a lawyer too, and went to is supposedly a constitutional lawyer, but he we know that he does not uphold the integrity or support the Constitution, habeas corpus. That's another thing that they were talking about. There's possibility that they're going to try to suspend habeas corpus rights, and that if they can create the pretext for the necessary scenario, which certainly could come in with this economic collapse that they've been planning and perpetuating. And if you don't think it's right around the corner, I mean, the fact that we have 19, almost $20 trillion in debt, and that it's continuing, even every second that we speak, it continues to skyrocket so much, though, that we have to pay millions of dollars just in interest. If you think that's going to continue for a very long time, you're absolutely foolish. You are absolutely out of your mind. The fact that metals are where they are, those of you that can do so, I absolutely believe it is a buying opportunity. And I'm not talking about, go out and get gold or platinum or any of these other really expensive metals. But right now, you can purchase silver. I think the last time I checked, it was like $14 an ounce when it had at one point reached over $50 an ounce. And it's my opinion that when, you know, SHTF, TF, uh, when it hits the fan, that silver prices are going to skyrocket, and that silver will be the trade of the century, because um, it will be in my opinion the go-to for barter amongst consumers and, those that have the goods, because it has a true significance as far as wealth. It has, uh, it will always have value. It's always can be utilized and traded for commodities, and that when when the system collapses, and they were talking about this new republic, and I forgot even to really go into that in greater detail, but basically they were talking about, the banks. Wells Fargo Insider was releasing and talking about how there's going to be a point where, the banks are going to basically go on a holiday, and just like as what had happened in Greece, that the banks are going to close. Nobody will be able to gain access to their money and to their funds, and that there will be a new currency brought forth, and that the Federal Reserve notes will be able to be traded in for this new Amero, which, people have talked about that for a long, very long time, and that, of course, there's going to be the value of the currency is going to be reset, and so um, that's another reason why, if you can afford to convert your dollars into something that's going to hold value in, no matter what it is. Oh, thank you, Kathy. Um, I'll have to check that out. She just posted a story, ban on cash coming soon, and so it's just a matter of when they want to pull it off. It's around the corner. Could be tomorrow, could be the next day. It might be a year down the road. We don't know. The thing about it is that you have to use what time you have remaining to prepare in the best way that you can. And it's my opinion that, because of the chaos that will ensue, and also because the protocols speak about how, when this occurs, when the bell is sounded and the economies of the world are collapsed, that they're going to send their gangs out to loot, to rape, pillage, and plunder. And so I know there's a lot of pacifists out there, and there's a lot of Christians that don't believe in, their Second Amendment rights. Um, i- i- in my opinion, you don't want to allow yourself to be ravaged by evil, and that there is nothing wrong with protecting yourself and your families. That you don't have to be an antagonist in any way, to, threaten others, but I believe it's our God-given right, certainly as Americans, to protect ourselves, and that, we're one of the very few nations of the world that still has the authority and the constitutional rights to do so. And those things were put into place in order for us to have protections against tyranny. And that tyranny often comes from big government and from, these shadowy groups which are trying to work from behind the scenes to overthrow our constitutional rights. They absolutely want to strip our Second Amendment rights in order that they can, trample the citizenry in a much easier manner. And it's my opinion that one of the reasons why the New World Order hasn't been able to establish um and to instill their authoritative rule in the manner that they wish to, as far as ruling with impunity and being able to slaughter us at their whim, is because the American citizenry is well armed and also well educated, as far as those that are awakened and that know what's going on, and that because of that, they fear they fear the armed citizenry of the United States of America, because we outnumber, the armies and the veterans and the police officers, which are really um, also constitutionalists and which are not New World Order allied, or have given their allegiance to the New World Order, but um, take and honestly, um, they respect their constitutional vows to protect the citizenry, the flag, and to fight against tyranny, both domestic and abroad. Um, that they will also stand up with the people to fight against anyone that tries to come in and invade us in such manner. And so that's why I believe America really is the last bastion, even though we've been decimated as far as our constitutional rights and our habeas corpus rights, and the Constitution being shredded, the Patriot Act being instilled and installed, and that basically the attitude of police and the militarization of police is such that you are guilty until proven innocent, whereas it used to be you were innocent until proven guilty. um, Still, we are the last bastion of freedom, as far as standing between a complete takeover, complete decimation, and holding on to our God-given rights, our inalienable rights, and our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That in these communist nations, in these godless atheistic nations, they have instilled you know, basically they lock up whoever they want, like in China, and they're prisoners. They will steal their organs and fulfill uh, the wants and the wishes of those that can afford to pay for and that need certain organs. Which at some point I'm gonna do a show on the dangers of being an organ donor, because so many of you don't understand that whole aspect of it either. But just really quick to tell you, if you're an organ donor, you're putting yourself at risk. And the reason I say this is because when you really look into and research um, organ donation and organ harvestation, the so-called um, the whole labels and the diagnosis that the American Medical Association and hospitals and doctors have created, As far as brain death and um, they say that you're in a vegetative state or whatever. All of that has been created in order to create a class of of people that can be harvested for their organs. Because if you're an organ donor, it's not that you're basically instilled and put into a coma, and then when they take your organs, that's what kills you. You're not really dead before your organs are taken, because as soon as a person dies, your organs are corrupted and they're not able to be used for transplant. And so the hospitals, the doctors, and the American Medical Association and the Organ Harvestation Network, they have created these diagnoses which are all false. They're all fake. It's an illusion. Uh, they have basically created these categories where people can be diagnosed in this manner, and then if you are diagnosed as one of these, whether it's comatose or vegetative state, whatever it is, or brain dead is what they say, and they can basically induce you into a coma and then declare you brain dead. This happens all the time, especially. Um, Another thing that people don't know is that your organs are worth up to $2 million to hospitals that basically black market trade in your organs. And because Americans are not able to sell our organs to hospitals, but if you're an organ donor, you automatically donate your organs. You're basically a price tag to them when you come in for their emergency care. And if you are, and all the hospitals are for profit institutions. And so you basically are a big bucket of money for them, and they would much rather sell your organs than save your life. And that's what's going on. And most people don't know about this and cannot understand it. But I'll do a whole 2 hour show where I make you aware of what's going on. And when you become aware of it, you'll run to your DMV and you'll